Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Law Chats with John and Amy. I'm John Yulian.
And I'm Amy Poliavko. This week's question is, what can I expect from my initial divorce consultation?
One of the things I want to start out explaining is that even before the divorce consultation, there's some items you want to be able to address ahead of time. One of which is you need to know whether there is going to be a charge for the initial consultation or there's no charge for the initial consultation. That's easy to determine when you set up your appointment. Make sure you check with the law firm and find out, is there a fee or not for the initial consultation. Another consideration is, do you want to go alone to meet with the attorney, or would you rather bring someone, which could be a family member or a friend that you're very comfortable with and don't mind having them also hear some of your marital history and your situation. Some people like having another set of ears with them when they go for the consultation.
There is one downside with that, though. Most people have heard of attorney-client privilege, which means anything you say to the attorney can't then be disclosed. Once you put a third party in the room, that's no longer the case. So that's something that you should consider, maybe discuss with the attorney, and possibly only have the person in there for part of the time.
Right, so you could go with someone and have them in the waiting area. But you need to be aware that if you do have them in the room with you, that could impact, as Amy said, the attorney-client privilege. The one other thing you want to have dealt with ahead of time is checking with the law firm or the attorney when you set up the appointment as to whether you need to bring any documents with you. And I think if you do those things, then you're ready for the initial consultation. Amy, can you describe what goes on at the initial consultation?
Sure. So it's a meeting with the attorney and maybe other associates in the firm or paralegals in the firm. The way that I operated, and just from having done it for so long, I generally kind of get a background on the person ahead of time because you're going to ask questions during it. And if I don't have that information, it's hard to give concrete answers. So I'm going to ask about when you got married, what's your marriage been like, what is causing you to consider divorce now, about your kids, about how they're doing in school and how old they are, what kind of activities they're involved in, what their schedule's like. I'm going to ask about your finances, if you have a mortgage, if you have credit card debt, what you guys both make. And I'm also going to talk about the divorce process, what that's like, what to expect. I'm going to give suggestions on what I think is reasonable to expect and not. And then I'm hopefully going to get to just know you a lot better. That's kind of the point of the meeting, is for us to get to know you, you to know us, and figure out if it's a good match or not.
Sure, and I think one thing you've always brought up is finding out what are the clients anticipate for 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And what are their expectations? So I think that's critical that be covered also.
Yeah, I think you got to know what their goals are to figure out how do we get them to that point, how do we set them up to get to that point, and if it's a reasonable expectation or not. And I think that there are attorneys who will promise you the entire world. And I find that I have happier clients because on day one, I tell them what I think is reasonable and not, and we go over their goals. But not every attorney is going to do that.
Yeah. And I think that's a critical point so that people have realistic expectations. And the one other thing is we sometimes have clients come in for a consultation who aren't sure if they're going to proceed with a divorce. They're concerned that that's where things may go. So that can happen plenty of times, and it's better to sort of be prepared going forward if you do need an attorney. So there's nothing wrong with going in for a consultation. The attorney, I know Amy and I are not here to make a decision whether you get divorced or not. It's basically just to inform the client and put them in a better position to understand what will transpire if they do go ahead with a divorce. I think that's a good point for us to end today, Amy.
Yeah. Thanks for joining Law Chats with John and Amy. We look forward to chatting with you again next week. If you have a question or comment, feel free to email us at info@yulianlaw.com. Remember that Law Chats with John and Amy is intended as a general reference and considered general advertising, and listeners should check for changes to any applicable laws and consult with an attorney on any legal issue. The information provided does not constitute legal advice, and any thoughts or commentary by the podcasting lawyers is provided as a service to the community and does not constitute solicitation of legal advice. The lawyers in the law firm of Yulian and Associates PC make no warranties and disclaim all liabilities for damages resulting from its use. Nothing provided in the podcast should be considered a substitute for advice from counsel. No attorney-client relationship is formed by listening or participating in this podcast, and in the event that the podcast receives emails about the subject matter, no attorney-client relationship is created via the email communication.